On December 7, 1941, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. It was commanded by Mitsuo Fuchida. There were 353 bombers and planes that attacked Pearl Harbor on that day. It was intended to damage the American supplies and ships enough so that they wouldn't join the war. It sunk 5 ships and damaged many others. More than 2,300 men were killed in the attack. Because of this, the bombing had the opposite effect on America because it made America angry. Because of Pearl Harbor, 10 weeks later, Order 9066 was signed on February 19, 1942 by Franklin D. Roosevelt. This order stated that the Secretary of War and who he chooses can select anyone to be forced to move to a designated military location and can determine what supplies they receive. These military areas are known as forced internment camps. This was intended to prevent any other attacks on America and their ports from the enemy forces, Japan, Germany, and Italy in World War II. This meant that mostly people of Japanese descent on the West Coast were selected for these camps, but there was a small percentage of Italians and Germans. This was mainly because Japan was the one involved in Pearl Harbor, so the Japanese Americans were guilty by association. And there were oil depositories, plane factories, and many farms on the West Coast. To get people to the camps, they forced them to quit their jobs, close their businesses, and pack what they needed. What they packed was the only thing that they would own for the rest of their internment. They then got schedules for their departure time onto trains going to the internment camps, which they had no choice over. About 2/3 of the Japanese living in America, or 120,000, at that time were forced to internment camps. There were 10 internment camps in America, the largest and most well-known being Manzanar in Southern California and Tule Lake in Northern California. Most of the camps were located on the West Coast. However, many people went to a preliminary camp so the government could finish the permanent camps for them to stay at. The conditions were not ideal either. There was no running water. They most likely used a lake or river, and there was bland or poor food to eat. They lived in cramped military-style barracks that they shared with their whole family. There were very thin walls, so you could hear even the next-door neighbor. There was also not much insulation to keep heat in or out, so this meant cold winters and hot summers. These conditions made it easy for disease to spread. Many people even died from it. However, they were fortunate to have nurses, doctors, and medicine. There were in fact 1,862 deaths in the camps. It was mostly diseases like cancer, heart disease, and tuberculosis. Some may not have occurred if they had not been interned. However, they most likely would have. Some of them did die separated from their family members because they had been put in a different camp though. They also didn't like feeling idle and not having much to do. Some internees found things to do like art, music, and sports to entertain themselves. Many people also had jobs to keep the camp running, but they were paid very little. The morale there was also very low because they had been imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit, and many young people lost their education because of the internment. Many camps did set up an education for younger children. However, most high school and college students were too old to be taught since there wasn't many professors at the camps. This created a lot of anger at the federal government in the camps. This changed the course of their life dramatically because after the internment they had to find a job since they had lost their previous one and needed to pay for food and rent. Most people couldn't balance school along with that. They also had to pay rent because they lost the property they had to sell when they were evacuated. This means they were arrested without a trial and their property was taken without due compensation. This violates two amendments, the Fifth Amendment, where it says, "Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation," and the Sixth Amendment, which gives people the right to a fair and speedy trial. The camps ended for concedingly loyal citizens on December 18, 1944, because of the court case Ex parte Endo. This court case's plaintiff was a Nisei, or a child of immigrants from Japan, called Mitsuye Endo. She was interned at Tule Lake for the entire court case, although she had been offered to come out for the court case. She had been selected for the court case by a lawyer named James C. Purcell. The case eventually went to the Supreme Court, who ruled unanimously that the loyal internees should be released. This court case was won because she had to be fired by the state of California because she had to be interned, and this was illegal. All of this led to the end of the internment camps. On the other hand, the internment camps were a success for the government because people became more confident in America and gained more support for the war. This united the people over a personified enemy and helped the government get an edge over their enemies because they could produce more resources and equipment, like energy, ammunition, and planes. There was also no other attacks on America's trade routes, which could have been another positive effect of the internment camps. The internment camps were a great tragedy for lots of America and its people, but it was a triumph because there was no attacks on the major trade routes of America during World War II, and it strengthened the American confidence and patriotism.